Hey Sun Space Sun, I'm Daisy Victoria, and today we are going to journey back into ancient Egypt. Now we've talked about ancient Egypt before, so you guys are like experts already, right? You know what, just in case you're not an expert or you're new or you just want a little bit more of a refresher, I'll give you a little bit. Now, ancient Egypt is a vast civilization and we actually know a lot about it because they left us lots of stuff to study. They must have really been thinking about us future folks who would want to know all about them. I'm sure that it was that and not because they believed that they needed to preserve all these items for the afterlife. Or maybe it was the latter. Anyway, ancient Egypt is a very big civilization. So it covers a vast number of years and a vast number of cultures within the kind of main culture. For purposes of what I usually show, like I'm usually sharing textiles, fashion, clothing, costuming. Fashion didn't change nearly as quickly as it does in later periods. So you kind of get away with muddying it a little bit, I guess, in saying ancient Egypt, but we can be a little more specific. Now, ancient Egypt is a vast civilization. We're talking thousands of years long. And within that civilization, as you might imagine, there are many smaller civilizations that come and go, many different types of cultures, different types of dynasties that ruled. Egypt is a very vast place, and especially ancient Egypt was a very vast, long-standing civilization. So when I say ancient Egypt, it is kind of a very big, vast umbrella term. So let's break it down just a little bit. There's a pre-dynastic period starting probably around 5500 BC. And this is when we have agricultural communities along the Nile. This is before Egypt was unified, which happened around 3100 BC. And after that, we get into the period of all the dynasties, which most of us kind of think of when we think of ancient Egypt. The Old Kingdom lasted until 2181 BC. This is where we got the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was built for King Khufu. This is kind of like the Great Pyramids age. There was an intermediate period where there was a little bit more strife, so more authority collapsing and hardships, which led into the Middle Kingdom. The Middle Kingdom lasted from 2055 to about 1650 BC. This would be a time when culture was thriving once again. But then the Hyksos came in and we had the Second Intermediate Period. This lasted for roughly 100 years, and once again there was more hardship in this time, though we did get some new military technology from the Hyksos. The New Kingdom starts around 1550 and goes until 1069 BC. This is the era with the rulers that many of us hear about just in pop culture, so like Tutankhamun, Hatshepsut, Ramses II, these are all rulers that were part of the New Kingdom. We have a lot of imagery and a lot of artwork to reference from this period. Now, following that, we did have a Third Intermediate Period from 1069 to 653 BC. So again, we had foreign invasions. This time from Nubia, we had Assyrians and Kushites. And then after that, we have what's known as the Late Period, when Egypt was conquered by the Persian Empire. And then we go into the Ptolemaic era, which is where Cleopatra VII lived, or I guess when she lived. Egypt finally is considered to have fallen to Rome in the year 30 CE. So that is a very brief overview of Egypt. We're going to focus on a project today. So I just wanted you to have a little bit of a baseline just in case you didn't. Now, I love exploring the textiles from ancient Egypt, specifically the clothing. And we've done a bunch of different Egyptian clothing on this channel before. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. So I really love all of these paintings of goddesses wearing what looks to be a beaded net dress. Now there are some extant beaded net dresses. I have been working on one for a while, and that is not what's in this video. So what's in this video is actually a painted net dress. Now we have reason to believe that the ancient Egyptians may have painted a net pattern onto fabric. There's a lot of stuff that we're kind of taking little pieces of and speculating. Keep in mind that a lot of what we do, a lot of even what's out there with archaeologists who spend their full time researching ancient Egypt, a lot of things are kind of pulling together what we have and drawing conclusions. And with clothing especially, we kind of have to fill in the blanks. So we have plenty of evidence of painting textiles from ancient Egypt. There's no question they painted textiles. We know this. There is even surviving painted clothing, so we do know that they did that. A difference between what they did and what I did is that back then they would have created their pigments from grinding up materials like stones. I used pigment that I purchased at the store. Another thing that I'm using is called block printing. Block printing is another very old technique. And we know that block printing was already well in use in Egypt later on, though we don't know the specific time when it began. We can surmise that perhaps it could have been used in this type of application to paint this type of dress. Block printing just means taking a block, typically in this old of a period it might have been made of wood, and you would paint your pigment onto the block and then print the block onto your fabric. It is still used today, and it's undergone many iterations to get where it is. For my block, I actually created this using a very simple CAD software, which is known as Tinkercad. Tinkercad is very easy to use. I do recommend it if you're just kind of trying something out and you don't have a lot of CAD skills. It's very easy. It's also very limited in functionality because it's like a simple free thing to use. Now, that being said, it's perfect for a simple kind of geometric shape. Now, my stamp I said is designed on Tinkercad. It is 3D printed at my local makerspace. In lots of these tomb paintings, we see goddesses wearing this beautiful, specifically red dress, which is perhaps painted, perhaps it's a beaded net dress. It is covered in this hexagonal pattern, and sometimes in the middle of each hexagon there will be a dot or a little, almost like a floral burst pattern of little circles. The dress that I'm making is linen. Linen is a very common textile for ancient Egypt, and mine is red. It is accurate to all these pictures that I'm reproducing, and they did have access to dyes and pigments, which is kind of counter to what people think. Like, people usually kind of have an idea of it all being white because we do have surviving white textiles, and also dyes break down over time. So I guess what I'm saying in summary to all of this is, even though we have very little actual surviving cohesive textile evidence, we have bits and pieces. We have the artwork that shows the dress. We have the colors from the artwork. We have the knowledge that they did paint textiles. We know that block printing came into use at some point in leading into the later era. And we have a lot of experiments that I've done for patterning dresses. So we're just kind of putting it all together and making it work. So I'm going to show you basically a lot of painting. So a lot of block printing and painting. All right, so let's get to work. To get started painting, we need the red linen fabric, the fabric stamp, which I 3D printed. We need some paint brushes. We'll use a couple different types, and we need the paint that we're going to apply to the fabric. I like to paint using this yoga mat as a surface. It gives me a little bit more give on the back of my fabric, so it just lets the stamp get in there a little bit better. Now, the technique for stamping is actually pretty simple. We're using a rectangle, that is the skirt of my dress. You've seen me make rectangular skirts on Egyptian dresses a number of times, so that's not really anything new. It's just a painted rectangle this time. So I've taken my red fabric and I did go ahead and serge the edges because this is going to be laying out here exposed quite a bit and I don't want it to unravel. I'm laying out my fabric nice and flat, and then I started by positioning the stamp just to get an idea of kind of how this is going to work out. It's always a good idea to just get an idea before you go in. You know what they say, measure twice, cut once, or maybe it's measure 5 times, cut once. Anyway, you get the point. I'm loading my stamp with paint. I'm just brushing on this gold acrylic paint, and I am getting ready to settle in for a long session of repetitive block printing. It's important that you get paint all over the stamp, and then when you set it on the fabric, you just press it down and give it enough pressure to make an impression. And it's never going to be quite perfect, especially with this type of stamp, so it looks pretty good. We are going to go back in here though to make it even more perfect with a paintbrush later. This is a process that just takes a really long time to do. So right here I'm lining it up and realizing that perhaps I should have made this stamp 2 rows instead of 3, but I made it 3. And that's because you see how you have the 2 longer rows, or rather the 2 rows that are more toward the left, you know, and then 1 in the middle more toward the right. So I ended up overlapping a little bit each time I stamped, and because of that I just didn't load as much paint on the stamp, so I didn't load that section of the stamp. So it's still got a little residual paint, but not like a fresh coat of paint. In hindsight, or if I were to make this stamp available to other people to use, I would just do it in 2 rows and make it a little bit more straightforward. Here you can see some of the stamping coming together. It is just going to take a really long time, so let's settle in and just keep repeating the process. After a really long time of stamping this entire rectangular piece of cloth, I am now going over every single line with a very small paintbrush. That's because I want to make sure that this net pattern is really crisp, really vibrant, and really shows up super well. So this is going to make it more consistent and thicker than what I can get from just the stamp alone. So yeah, this is another process that took a really long time. These are the kinds of projects you want to do just to kind of get in the zone and relax into the project. While we're doing this, I'll make a note. The way that this emulates the bead net dresses is that you would have a row of beads going across, so horizontally, that would be a row of beads. The rows are attached to each other in what creates a hexagonal pattern. So there's another bead in between each row where you have like a vertical line in the hexagonal pattern. So that's how this is emulating the bead net dress. So each zigzag horizontal line would represent a row of beads, and then the vertical lines would be the beads that connect all of the horizontal rows together. I decided to go full on floral burst in the center of each hexagon, because if I'm spending many, many hours painting this dress, why not just make it the most that I possibly could? We're not stopping at a single dot in the center, we're doing many dots. After first doing a test hexagon in the corner, I started doing just all of the blue center dots first. I used this little round sponge to create that blue dot at the center of each hexagon all over the skirt. Round sponge brush. And then I did all of the little pearlescent green dots that make up the burst of the floral pattern. For the waistband of the dress, I'm doing this a little bit differently. I'm blocking this out using a masking tape. That will give me negative space, so that way I can paint rectangular or striped designs, and the tape will block off the sections that I don't want to paint at the time. I'm using a similar technique of blocking with tape on the bodice of the dress, except this time I'm just doing stripes on the outside of the bodice pieces. This dress also has a band at the hemline that matches the way I painted the band at the waist. After painting all of the fabric, it helps to heat set the paint. So I'm taking just a piece of muslin and then I'm ironing over that over my pieces that I painted. Finally, it's time to assemble the dress. That's actually the really quick part of this project. I assemble these dresses by sewing the bodice onto the waistband and then the skirt onto the entire thing. One more thing. I wore this dress to a tournament where I had a fighter fighting for me, so we decided to do like a Greece and Egypt thing. It totally makes sense. And for this occasion, we decided that we'd make something on our outfits coordinated, so I did some stamping of the same design onto his Greek tunic that he wears with his armor. This time I just did 3 rows at the top of his chiton. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you've enjoyed this adventure, mostly in painting and just a little bit of sewing also added in. This dress is really beautiful by itself. I also like to wear it accessorized different ways. So I can wear it with a cloak of Lower Egypt. There are lots of just rectangular cloaks that were used. You could wear them over both shoulders. In Lower Egypt, there's a lot of imagery of them wearing it over one shoulder. Also, when it gets a little chilly out, I like to wear my abaya over this. And overall, this is a dress that just feels very, very regal. My dress also matches a headpiece that I recently made. I didn't film the making of the headpiece, but essentially it's a bunch of gold ribbon that I attached filigree to, and in each filigree, I put a little gemstone, so a little unfaceted gem. I got red and blue ones, and then I linked all of these strips together using jump rings. And there's a little comb underneath it so it sits nicely on my head. This is an approximation of headpieces that we see from this time period in Egypt as well. I hope that you got some inspiration or some enjoyment of some type. If you'd like to connect with me further, please find me on all the social medias as Daisy Viktoria. My website is daisyviktoria.com, where you can find patterns, tutorials, and all kinds of digital resources that can further help you. And you can also join me over on Patreon, where we do monthly live streams. And thank you so much to my patrons for helping to enable this. I hope you all have a wonderful, magical day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.